I knew from a very young age that I would be an artist. You know, like I was like an existentialist at like, 8. You know what I mean?
I do. I was also.
Right? I certainly had no idea, like really, at 8, that's what was pulsing through me, right? Or that I would respond to the world, in a kind of an imaginative way. So I was very, interested in this idea of participating in the world as an artist at a very young age. And I don't think I could do anything else.
The first thought that I had that I can remember is somebody, people trying to call me by my name and thinking to myself, like, who is Terence? Like,
oh, how interesting. Oh, how fascinating, really. Oh, yeah. That's so interesting. Oh, I love that.
It was very like...
Who is Terence?
Like, and not who is Terence, but like, who are they talking to?
Yeah,
like,
that is so Terence interesting.
Yeah. I think what I've been attempting to do, and we have been attempting to do with the show, is to find like, something we can't find alone together, and sort of dissolve the even the communal ego of that, what I mean? And I think that is it's a survival tactic.
I think that there are generational shifts, and I am excited about them. One of the pieces that I've made recently has to do with the using my own body again of a woman who arrives in Hollywood too early. She arrived too early. I've been thinking about these ideas about popular culture, what's happening in popular culture, the terms of the culture, the way in which it works, the way in which it functions. I've been thinking about it since the very beginning, right? So for 40 years, 50 years, I've been mining this material, thinking about this material, and thinking about, and sort of thinking about, where are, the African-American bodies and African-American aesthetics and African-American ideas, and more sort of simply more expansive ideas away from sort of whiteness, where are those things located? And how will they be, incorporated within inside of a system that has historically excluded, for the most part, brown bodies. So I've been really thinking about it for a very long time. I've made many, sort of works around it, written a lot about it. I used to go through like the New York Times, like the Sunday section, and just weep because there was nothing there. We were, as much as I'm fascinated by all kinds of other artists, right? I appreciate what's happened in the world in terms of the arts, but that there was no representation of blackness in any form was just stunning to me. The lack was stunning, right? And a part, I think, of what's happening within contemporary culture are all of these institutions are realizing that they overlooked and did not understand the significance of the coming of that day that is around the corner, right? And so there are all these institutions that are trying to figure out, and what do we do? And how do we respond, right? I mean, how does the Hammer respond? How does, UTA respond? How does, Hollywood respond? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, and so a part of, the dynamic, this opening up and this flowering, has to do with, finally these universities and museums and institutions understanding, oh my God, if we don't want to open these doors, we will be completely irrelevant. A part of, what's happened to our circumstance in America is that we have become Americans. As much as we are African Americans, right? But the part of the thing about the sort of complexities of our cultural production have been so ripped and so torn and so taken and so buried and so erased, right? That you are, again, and that's why we come back to music, right? That you have to dig for you. You have to dig to really discover not your blackness as such, but your true self. And I'm asking myself this question of, and what is your aesthetic range, Carrie? What is it? What does it look like? Right? You know, so there are many influences that are coming from a variety of sources, but what is your shit? Really, what is it? And how do you articulate it? And it's not that it's just simply being observed. A part of the observation is, do you then play to the observed? Right? You know? Because if you allow, if you play to them, then it changes it. Right? But if you play to you, if you play to you, to a deeper understanding of self, then what you allow the viewer to do is to walk into your process, not sort of backtracking, you know, and backing up into theirs. You know, in photography, there's the zone system, right? From 1 to 10, right? You know, within, you know, sort of the European tradition, things look best and skin look best above zone 5, which was going towards the lighter end of the scale, where Di Carava always pushed towards the bottom end of the scale, towards things that were dark. So when his work was initially brought to the attention of people at the Museum of Modern Art and all of these sort of institutions, which were primarily, of course, ran by white men, they would look at the work and they would say, well, it's so dark. It's so dark, right? As though we're not an intention, you know? And so the intention was completely misunderstood. And there's a really wonderful book called In Praise of Shadow. It's by a Japanese writer, right? Who talks about these ideas of sort of tonalities.
Black Teeth woman. Black Teeth. That has an impression of me, yeah. There's an instinct to be in a sort of elastic relationship to each other that is constantly turning back where we can for that kind of emotional survival and creative, you know, home space that feels like, you know, in supreme reverence of that car that y'all are in front, looking back through, seeing the flowering, you know, and I think that, you know, makes use of that. Like when you were doing this about that generation before, I kind of imagined like a foot going into a new shoe. You know what I mean? Like, okay, now we're in the shoe. You know, let's dance. You know what I mean? That type of thing, and like being in a embodying a kind of spirit of celebration or joy that is still in acknowledgement of the fact that we have to survive and thrive. You know? The danger is not gone. You know.
Oh, definitely, it's still there. You know, I come back in my life to themes of power constantly, right? You know, that if I sort of push aside all the other things that I'm looking at and thinking about, you know, and I get down to like the core of the thing, I'm really trying to figure out how do you sort of unpack the dynamics of power and its ability to either control you or that you in some way control, right? The thing that interests me is that, you know, how you get to the truth is not just through the thing. It's not really about the photograph, but rather it's the construction of the photograph. That's the interesting thing, right? It's not the film, it's the construction of the film. It's the narrative that resides within the film, right, that speaks to us, right? It's the story. It's the imagination that that scratches towards its humanity. That's the interesting thing.
Everyone can choose now a little bit. They can watch the show or they can watch you do the trick.
Yes.
What do you make of what you are facing now as a woman?
So, you know, I've been paying attention to, you know, what it meant to be, you know, what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a woman artist for a really long time. And, you know, when I really looked across the landscape of my life, and I realized that that very few men had ever really supported me. It blew my mind. I couldn't believe it. But I had to really look, right? And I thought, they've never really supported me, right? I've been in all the, they might take my ideas.
You on a lot of mood boards.
Right? They'll take my ideas, they'll use my ideas, but they will not use me. And that's pretty deep. So, you know, so these ideas about the ways in which women, you know, or minorities might be undervalued is reflected in the work. It's talked about in the work. It's negotiated in the work, that you're always dealing with that sort of complex pie and moving around those issues. And I think it's really, really important. But, you know, as they say, to change reality, you have to start with reality. So where are you placed on the scale, what's happening, and your ability to be self-critical, to sort of look at it, you know, to be aware of how you are, you know, how you might be an accomplice in your own victimization, right? All of that stuff becomes, I think, really imperative to sort of look at in terms of how you negotiate the realities of our lives.